Hello, SMPS volunteers, and welcome to today's virtual roundtable for volunteers on Chapter Finance. This program is going to be recorded and made available on the SMPS YouTube Volunteer Training channel, as well as the libraries for chapter treasurers and all chapter leaders in the communities of my SMPS. I'm Natalie Gozzard, SMPS's Chapter Service Manager, and I'm joined today on the administrative side of this webinar by SMPS's Chapter Services and Membership Coordinator, Julio Santos. On behalf of the SMPS board and the entire headquarters staff here, we extend a big thank you to you all for joining us today and for all that you do to serve your chapter members and the society at large. Now, before we get started, all lines are muted. We certainly encourage questions and the sharing of great ideas. So if you have a comment or a question, you may press the raise hand icon on the right side of your screen and we'll unmute you. You may also ask questions by typing your question in the question text box located on the right side of your screen at all. We'll stop about halfway through the program, take some questions, and of course at the end of the program. Julio and I are going to be looking for your questions. So today's program is on Chapter Finance, and it's entitled Finance, Budget, Budget, Budget. Our presenter today is SMPS's Controller, Antonio Payne. Welcome, Antonio. Are you ready to get started, sir?
I think I'm ready, Natalie. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome again, everybody. Natalie did a great job of letting you guys know why we're here. I just want to reiterate that this is a roundtable. We encourage your feedback. We encourage the sharing of ideas. You guys are each other's greatest resource, so we encourage you to speak up and not let me be the only voice for this hour-long trek. Find out what works for other chapters and then tailor it to your own needs. We found that that is probably the best way for you guys to be successful. I have some ideas that I'm going to share with you about what works here at the headquarters level and what I think will translate at the chapter level as well. Obviously, we're here to talk about planning your budget. We are here in the middle of August, right at the end of our fiscal year. So if you have not begun to plan your budget, we certainly hope that that is on the horizon. One of the reasons that our Vice President, Mary Cruz, suggested this title for this particular roundtable subject is that you guys should certainly have begun to think about budgeting. We are in the throes of the budget process here at the headquarters level, and budgeting is an integral part of having a successful chapter and a successful fiscal year, 2016-17. As you can see from the picture, this guy is doing it the hard way. We don't suggest we do it that way. One of the things that we're going to do is highlight some tools that we provided here at the headquarters level for you guys in planning your budgets. Whether you're an incoming treasurer or a seasoned veteran of chapter finance, we strongly encourage you guys, in order to hit the ground running for 2016-17, to do the following things. Review the finance section of your SMPS chapter manual. Review your SMPS Treasurer's Toolkit. Review your chapter financial procedures. Now, many of you have told me at the chapter level that you have not seen chapter financial procedures. A lot of you do have them. We suggest that if you're entering as a treasurer for the upcoming year and you guys don't have documented financial policies, that you make that job one after you get your budget done. We ask you to review prior year financial reports for your chapters. That will help to inform how you formulate your budget. Next, we ask you to form a budget committee. And once all of that is done, you're ready to begin the budget process. I've actually had some chapter treasurers ask me whether a budget is in fact important. Why do we need a budget? The primary reason is because it's not your money. It's not our money. That money belongs to the chapter. It belongs to our members. As chapter volunteers, chapter officers, and board members, we have a fiduciary duty to our members to safeguard the assets of the chapter. Budgeting also fosters goal setting. What does success look like for you? Did you make money or not? Now what? It also fosters benchmarking. It allows you to compare results from year to year or month to month, and it also provides as a source for checks and balances. We encourage that once the budget is formulated and approved by the board, hopefully during that first board meeting of the year in September, that any expenditure above and beyond what's been budgeted is actually approved by the board. Who builds the budget? Earlier in the slide, I asked you guys to formulate a budget committee. Well, these are some of the people who would form that committee. Ideally, that committee would be made up of at least 3 members, and they can be officers of the chapter. Obviously, the treasurer would be the primary member of the committee, program coordinators, but basically anybody who plays an active role in financial decision making at the chapter level should be a part of the budget process. Financial reporting. We've heard from the chapters, the majority of you guys either use QuickBooks or some form of Excel spreadsheet to do your financial reporting. We obviously encourage QuickBooks or some other software as a more reliable means to do your financial reporting. But obviously due to cost constraints and other factors, some chapters elect to use Excel spreadsheets. So what we've done at the headquarters level is provide a couple of resources, one from each, one as a QuickBooks template, which I'll show you very shortly, and also an Excel spreadsheet that you can use to formulate your budgets. So here we actually have our SNPS chapter training QuickBooks template, which is available to you guys. All you have to do is contact me, and I can send you an invitation. This allows you guys to play around in QuickBooks and get a feel for it, decide if you want to use it in your chapter, or if you're currently using it, or you're using some other version, maybe the QuickBooks Online model works better for you. If you click the SNPS chapter training icon here, I'll just go right to budgeting. And you'll see that I've actually already highlighted and populated some budget items that are pretty standard at the chapter level. You have chapter member dues rebates, monthly programs, client panels, educational events, special events, job bank, sponsorship income, investment income. And then down here you have levels of expenditures, which are pretty common to you guys at the chapter level. Again, this is a tool that you guys can use. All you have to do is reach out to me and I'll give you an invitation. You can go in here. You can even create a new budget for your own chapter. It'll walk you through the process. And you can actually download it to Excel if that's something you choose to do. So we could just call this webinar and finished. And we have a blank budget that we could use to populate. Again, this is a great tool. This is just a template. It allows you guys to play around, to use QuickBooks, to learn how to use it, I should say, and to decide if this is something that's good for you at the chapter level. We use the desktop version of QuickBooks at the headquarters level. recommend QuickBooks. It's fairly easy to use. It provides great reporting. You can download the reports into Excel and work with them and tailor the reports to suit your needs. If QuickBooks is not for you, however, and you decide that you want to do something in Excel, our illustrious S&PS treasurer, Chris Rickman, actually created this Excel spreadsheet, which is a annual budget, and it is formulated by month. I'm just going to click the September tab, and you'll see that I've populated some budget items by program, and it's very similar to the QuickBooks model that I just showed you. But you have typical programs, client panels, educational events, special events, job bank, sponsorship. Everything's broken out exactly the same. But you'll see we have actual income populated. We have budget. You'll see that we actually did a little bit better than what we budgeted for the month. And you have expenditures along with that budget column. So you'll see net income actual was $25,000 for the month, and we budgeted $20,900 for the month. You can actually go through, populate this Excel spreadsheet by month if you like, or if you just want to do it by year, you can do it by year. And if you go to the next to last tab, you'll see that it actually tabulates your annual income year to date. So it actually does all the work for you. All you have to do is fill in the spreadsheet by month. This is actually a great tool as far as Excel goes. Again, our preference is that you guys use spreadsheets. To use software, because Excel is a tool, but it is a little bit easier to make mistakes in Excel. This particular spreadsheet is protected, so there are only certain cells that you can go in and populate. So it mitigates the types of mistakes that you can make, but still software is a more foolproof method of doing your financial reporting. At this point, we're going to stop and take a few questions. I want to hear from you guys, I really do. And Julio, hopefully you guys have some questions that we can take.
Yep, we have a few so far. So I'll just start off with the question of when should we begin the budget process?
Good question. So again, we're in the middle of August, and hopefully you guys have already started to talk about and to plan your budgets, but ideally you want to start building your budget or the budget process in June. This allows you the ability to formulate a draft and to make tweaks as necessary with the idea to have a draft budget finalized and ready for budget approval, for board approval by that first meeting in September.
Great. And we have a second question. How much does the QuickBooks, the online version, cost?
The online version typically runs you about $40 a month. I know for some chapters that can be quite an expense, but I think it's worth it just to have the peace of mind that you have software that's made to do exactly what we're trying to do versus tailoring Excel to do what you want it to do. So it costs about $40 a month, but again, I think it's well worth it.
All right, and I have just one more question here. And where could we find the Excel template to download, the sample that you showed?
Another great question. So the Excel template is in the Treasurer's community. of my SMPS, and you can locate it there. If for some reason you are in the treasurer's community and cannot find it, you can always contact myself or any member of the chapter services team to find it.
And we have a quick great bit of info here from Ruth from Dallas. She mentioned it is about $50, but they usually offer a discounted rate for the first 3 months. So that's always a good option to look into.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ruth, for that comment. And again, you guys, we encourage you to share your ideas, share what has gone on in the field with you, because what you do is a lot more relatable to each other than maybe what we do at the headquarters level. Please continue to keep those ideas coming in.
And I do have a few more if we have time to run through them.
Let's do it.
Okay, so one is more of a statement, but so if it's not a premium, it sounds like, or I'm sorry, if it's not a premium account on QuickBooks, you can actually have it running for $12.95 a month. Again, if it's not premium.
Okay.
So that's always great. And then we do have one question. The QuickBooks template, it looks like you had it integrated, and a chapter has a QuickBooks account. Can we upload the template into our own account through QuickBooks? I'm assuming is what she's saying.
I think that's something we can probably make happen, but that one I suggest you talk to me offline about, and we can put our heads together and figure out how to do it.
Okay, perfect. And that's all we have so far in terms of questions.
But absolutely, in terms of just if you wanted to integrate the chart of accounts and the different levels of revenue and expenses, that's something we could do from version to version. Was that the last question you said?
Yes, that seems like it's about it for now.
All right. Thank you guys for all the questions. Keep them coming, and keep those comments coming in as well. Again, more of you and less of me is what we're aiming for. This is a roundtable. All right. Once you've done your budgeting, you've gotten into the year, a best practice is obviously that you review your results against the budget on a regular basis. You decide what works best for you in terms of what regularly means. For us, it's monthly. We review the financials with our board every month, and on a quarterly basis, we actually do a deeper dive where we actually go through different line items, and we entertain questions or explain budget variances as we go along with the board. The other thing we suggest you guys do is communicate with your board regularly about the budget and how you guys are performing with the budget. And by board, I mean anybody who is not a part of the finance committee. People who are not necessarily finance people. You need to keep them engaged, because you guys, again, are fiduciaries. Everybody, not just the chapter president, not just the chapter treasurer, is responsible for safeguarding the assets of the chapter. And so everybody needs to be fully plugged in to what's going on fiscally with the chapter. And the last thing we say is always give us a call if there's anything about budgeting or anything about chapter finance that you guys have a question with or about. Myself and Denise Shankin, our assistant controller, are here to assist you, as well as our brilliant chapter services team. The last thing I wanted to talk about is reserves. We get a lot of questions from chapters. Chapters obviously vary in size and shape. Some have large. Some of the larger chapters have extremely large cash reserves. Some of the smaller chapters have very little in reserves. But we think it's important that you, number one, build a budget that plans for at least a small surplus so that you can begin to build your reserves up. What is reserves? Reserves are cash that is set aside that is not used to cover operating expenses. That means if you have a $50,000 in revenue and $25,000 in expenses, then that $25,000 can be set aside as reserves. Some uses of your reserve funds can be to fund special projects. I'll just share that one of the things that we did at the headquarters level was to fund the new Markendium, which debuted at Bill Business last week with great success. But we actually, that was a fairly large outlay of cash, and it wasn't something that we built into our operating budget, so that we used reserves to fund that particular project. Having a reserve account promotes long-term planning. And that is budgeting beyond just 1 year, but maybe a 3-year or 5-year plan. Again, we go back to what a success looks like to you, but we don't just want to live in the moment, and we don't want to live for that 12-month period where you might be serving as a treasurer, or the 24-month period where you're serving as a treasurer, but we want to set the chapter up for long-term success. And a SMART goal for your targeted reserve fund is 50% of your annual expenses. And if I could just go back to that spreadsheet, I'll just show you. Again, this is a Chris Rickman production. The very last tab of the spreadsheet is a balance sheet. So, and this tells you that we have $44,000 in cash available. If you look at the fiscal year P&L, you'll see that we have about $19,000 in expenses. So that allows us to possibly put away about $20,000 in reserves. We have a great many reputable reserve investment brokerage houses that we use. Actually, Morgan Stanley as our investment broker. We've used them for years, and they've been very good. It's also prudent for you guys to have an investment model that mitigates risk in terms of the amount of stocks and bonds that you use in your investment portfolio. At this point, I'm going to stop and allow our chapter services team, led by Natalie Gossett, to go through some resources and support that we have for you guys at the chapter level. I've highlighted some of them. Natalie, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Antonio. And I'm seeing some questions and some comments coming in, so we'll loop right back to those as soon as I go through the resources that we have. So keep in mind, folks, you don't have to go it alone or reinvent the wheel as you assume this position for the first time, or you're continuing on for the second year, or you're just part of the finance team of your chapter. So many resources and samples are available. Please feel free to make staff your #1 resource, your go-to resource. We're always here to assist you with any, point you in the right direction, any resources that you need. We've made 4 documents available for you today that you can download. If you just look on the right side of your screen, take these, share these with your team. They're attached as handouts, so as I said, you can download. Antonio's referenced these documents throughout the program. The handouts are included. There are 4. We have the SNPS Treasurer's Toolkit. We have the Finance and Administrative section of the Chapter Manual. Also included is the 990 Easy Guide to Chapter IRS Information Returns. This is just for chapters. And lastly, and this was newly created just about a month ago, we now have an SNPS calendar for the 2016-17 fiscal year. And this document is especially useful in that it details what's due and in what month. So for example, it lists, it starts with September. So September 30th, what's due? Chapter Finance Report. So it's all clearly laid out for you to reference and to share with your team. Now, all of these manuals, toolkits, guides, the sample budgets that Antonio showed you that Chris Rickman created, and all the related documents are available within your MySMPS community. So MySMPS is our online connected community. I'm hoping by now everyone has been in there and is really seeing what a rich resource it can be. Within MySMPS, 2 communities exist specifically for you all the volunteers. One is the Treasurers community. All treasurers are members of the Chapter Treasurers community. And this community, as well as all the other communities in MySMPS, has a discussion functionality so that you can ask questions with other treasurers to the staff. You can also share information and resources with other community members and staff. So also a library exists, and within this library you can easily access and download all the financial docs that you need that we've referenced, sample budgets, tax information, the toolkits and manuals, etc. This is where they all are. Now, the other community that you have available to you is the All Chapter Leaders community, and this is comprised of all chapter leaders, not just treasurers. So the discussion topics within this community you'll see are more broad in scope, still very rich. It would certainly be beneficial to post some questions for finance and you'd be able to hear from more chapter leaders. So a finance folder exists within this library, and it contains many of the same resources, if not all, that you'll find in the Treasurers Community Library. This specifically is where you will find the SMPS calendar that I referenced for the fiscal year. It resides only in this community right now. So we certainly encourage you to explore both of these communities and familiarize yourself with all the resources that you have available. If you have any questions on MySMPS or how to use it, just reach out to me, Natalie at smps.org. And of course, logging into MySMPS, the login is the exact same that you would use to log in to the website. So now I'd like to loop back to those questions that we had coming in, and perhaps folks, please share some best resources. I'll take it back over to you, Julio, to start off with, I think we had a great comment regarding starting off the year with budgeting.
Yep, we had a great comment from Glenda Bastress. She has a little bit of input on the actual creation of the budget. She said that she has a debrief with outgoing and incoming board and have them discuss the budget for their committees. The individual committees submit what they would like to do for the year, and they tweak it out at their planning retreat. So they're ready to move forward with the budget in August. So that's a great point there.
Absolutely.
Great.
And
Antonio,
we have.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Nope. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I have a few other questions. I have a question from Ruth. She's asking if we recommend investing for the larger chapters.
Absolutely. If you have cash in reserve, we suggest that you not let it sit in a bank account, a checking account, an ordinary checking account, or even a savings account, if they don't draw very much money. We can help you guys if you don't already have an investment policy that's been approved by your board. We can help you to formulate one, and we can even give you some ideas about who you might want to invest with.
Perfect. I have two other questions that actually kind of go hand in hand. First question is there a max amount as a not-for-profit that you should have in your reserves? And the other question is, can you have too much money in the reserves? So those go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And the answer to that question is yes, you can have too much money in your reserve. Because we are set up as not-for-profit organizations, anything over and above a year's worth of reserves is probably too much. So what do we suggest that you guys do if you have that much in reserve? There are a myriad of ways that you can invest in your members, in the chapters themselves. You can If you're using Excel spreadsheets, you can use some of that money to actually get some software and start doing your financial reporting using QuickBooks as we recommend. You can obviously have larger programs and use some of your reserves to offset the cost to your members. But yes, you can actually have too much in reserve.
Thanks, Antonio. So there's a question from Dan here. You mentioned investing in reserves. Right now, our chapter's reserves are all in our bank account. What percentage do you recommend keeping liquid in the bank versus investing in a portfolio?
So that's the answer to that question is going to vary from chapter to chapter. But as far as liquidity, if you have some foresight into the amount of cash you're going to need over the next quarter, I would say no more than 3 months worth of expenses, but I keep in a regular checking account. The rest I would want to have making money.
Great, thank you. And we have some other comments here. Ruth Hill mentions this is her second year in her role. She already has a deputy shadowing me, or shadowing her, I should say, to prepare to take over in 2017. She has a meeting once a month for now, and then next year, or I'm sorry, next week she's having meetings with all the board members about chapter financials, both incoming and returning members.
Great comment. I think it's vitally important that there is a smooth transition from one board member to the next, especially in the treasurer role. So we highly recommend some overlap, some training from one chapter treasurer to the next. It definitely fosters success versus
Perfect.
having a brand new treasurer come in cold and not know what they're doing.
Perfect, thank you. And we have another question here. How much is a year's worth of reserves? Is it half of operating budget? Please provide an example with a dollar amount.
Okay, so if we go back to the spreadsheet here, if you look at this year-to-date tab, you'll see that our budget in line 68 is $19,450 in annual expenses. So that would be 1 year's worth of reserves in theory.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's all we have. We do encourage more questions to come through. We've had a steady trickle of questions, but please type in the question box if you have any more.
I had seen a question. Someone had someone wanted to let us know that they were challenged with getting into the treasurer's community, and I might have misspoke on that. The treasurer's community is comprised of current treasurers. So if you are assuming the role of your chapter treasurer as of September 1st, you will be populated into that community. So please let me know if you'd like to get in there early. We have about a week and a half or so. I can certainly do that for you. If there's a specific question that you'd like to pose to the community, or if you're just interested in getting in there and poking around in the library, I can certainly do that for you. And I recommend you check out the all chapter leaders community as well. So if you have any questions regarding my SMPS, again, Natalie@smps.org. I'm happy to walk you through it and get you into it if you're challenged with anything. So just reach out. Happy to help you.
And again, I want to encourage you guys after this webinar is over to get into my SMPS and share your ideas, share your best practices, share things that are working for you, even share things that haven't worked for you, because maybe that'll help somebody who's coming into their role as treasurer, maybe help prevent some missteps.
Absolutely. So Antonio, you did recommend that chapters should be reviewing their budget monthly at their board meetings, correct?
I did, at a minimum quarterly, but
Okay.
we would highly recommend on a monthly basis.
Excellent. Very important. Anything else? And would anyone like to encourage the sharing of best practices? You have Antonio right here. If there's anything that you'd like to ask him. You see any other questions coming in, Julio?
I do have one that just came in. They're asking if we can recommend a broker for investing their reserves.
We use Morgan Stanley, and we've been with them for 20 plus years, and we're very happy. I'll just tell you that you want to compare pretty much any national, internationally recognized brokerage firm will have similarities. You want to compare fees, things like fees, the cost to ride with that particular manager, but more importantly, you want to look at how their portfolios perform versus the S&P 500. I can say that Morgan Stanley has typically outperformed the S&P by at least 1 percentage point in every year since I've been here at S&PS. So that speaks very highly for the investment managers that they have on board. But
Great, thanks. We have some more questions coming in. How
Great.
often should how often should an external audit be conducted, and who should perform the audit?
So we encourage an audit to be done at least on an annual basis. We also highly encourage that that be done by an auditor, CPA. It does not necessarily have to be a CPA firm because they tend to be a little more expensive. But in your professional travels, if you happen to know of an accountant, a CPA, you might get a quote from them for providing annual audit services. In absence of actually getting a CPA to do it, many chapters have done different things, including having past treasurers come in and take a look at the books. That's not, obviously that's not a completely independent set of eyes, but it's better than nothing. So we actually speak to the audit process in the Treasurer's Toolkit, which Natalie referenced earlier. If you have specific questions about what's in that toolkit as it relates to the audit process, don't hesitate to give me a call or email me at antonio@smps.org.
Antonio,
Great. We have
easy to learn. We had a question from an attendee, and I also would like to know, because I actually haven't used QuickBooks. Is QuickBooks easy to learn? Is it user-friendly for folks?
QuickBooks is extremely user-friendly, almost too user-friendly. But it is probably the easiest software to learn, and you don't necessarily have to have a finance background to learn it. But I'll just pop back into the tutorial for 1 second, if I may. Where is it? So if you just, there are all kinds of tutorials in here, but if you click help and just type anything from, we'll just say journal entry, it'll actually walk you through the process of making a journal entry if you click onto it. Very user-friendly, and beyond that, we have multiple chapters who are using it, and we use it at the headquarters level. So if there's anybody who ever has a question that can't be answered intuitively by using the help module, then you have a lot of resources at the chapter level and at the headquarters level that can help you, including myself.
Yeah, that actually does look pretty easy. So if anyone out there is having, some difficulty or they have questions, just give me a call. I'd be happy to set up a quick go-to-meeting with Antonio. He can share his screen with you and walk you right through it. So just let us know what you need help with. We're always here for you. So I see another question for you, Antonio.
Keep them coming.
Okay. There's a chapter. Chapter is new to actually having reserves on hand. Yay! What a great new problem to have, or a great new challenge. And this person would like to know, what does a chapter do with the proceeds from investments?
You can reinvest them in the chapter. Like I said, you can use the proceeds to offset some of the costs of your programs to your members. You can use it to fund special projects. You might have a speaker who you've had your eye on, but in the past it's been too expensive. You can use the profits from your reserves to help fund those speaker fees. But there's nothing wrong with building up your reserves beyond that 6-month level that we suggest that you guys have. It's just that anything above a year in reserves is when it can get problematic for a not-for-profit.
Great. Antonio, I see a question. Attendee would like to know, are other chapters reconciling more than one payment platform? For example, there's a chapter that's using both PayPal and WePay.
We have run into a few chapters like that. That is an extreme headache, trying to reconcile 2 different platforms. We actually do it at the headquarters level, and so I can speak to it from experience. It's not the ideal way to go about processing and reconciling your transactions, especially if you don't have a finance background. It can create unnecessary headaches. Can you guys speak to how you are doing at having 2 different platforms? And you can get back to me offline if you like, but I'd like to know how you guys are doing with it.
We have a comment. This is from Heidi Mackey. Heidi's wanted to share with you, Antonio, that she was not under the impression that there was a max to the reserves before they get in trouble with the IRS. Their budgeted expenses for next year are $84K. Current bank balance as of end of July is $82,600. So Heidi's saying, I do have a number of expenses this month, but I anticipate that our bank balance by the end of August will be around $78K. So very close to 1 year in reserves. She wants to know, are they getting into trouble?
No, 1 year in reserves is absolutely fine. It is actually ideal. That 6-month threshold is what we suggest for chapters who are just starting to build up their reserves. A target goal of 6 months is adequate. 1 year is actually ideal. Anything above that is where you want to start to use the money in reserves to help fund your chapters and benefit your members.
Okay, great. Attendees, any other questions or best practices you'd like to share at this time with us? Okay, well, I'm ready. You ready to wrap this up, Antonio?
I think so. I want to thank you guys for joining us today, and it's been very informative. I got out of it just what I wanted to. I wanted you guys to talk and share your experiences and best practices and ideas, and you've done that. So I'm a happy camper. Natalie?
That's always good. Well, thank you, Antonio, for your time. And chapter volunteers, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, we really understand your time is so valuable, and we're just thrilled that you set aside this time to tune in and join us, share your best practices, and ask some questions. As always, staff here is 100% available for you, so please feel free to reach out to us whenever you need us. And we look forward to having you join us on our next financial virtual volunteer roundtable. Thanks so much, everybody. This ends our program for today. Bye-bye.